Ans Westra's archive is one of Aotearoa's most significant cultural collections. Managing an artist's estate means deciding what to show, what to hold back, and whose voices guide those choices. Today, we're joined by David Alsop, director and owner of Sweet Gallery and the manager of the Ans Westra archive, to explore what it means to steward an artist's legacy and ensure that their work continues to speak long after they're gone. Thank you so much for coming in today, David. It's so nice to have you here and to see you. Welcome.
Thank you.
A good place to start, I thought, to begin. You manage the Ans Westra archive. What are the key responsibilities and the challenges of managing an artist's estate like this that holds such an incredible place in our country's cultural history?
Well, where do I start with that? And there's archives, and I guess something this scale makes it enormous, and the challenges and responsibilities are really wide, quite varied. And the priorities around those can actually change time to time too. So, there's the usual stuff like custody, looking after things safely. There's the legal side of it, which is in the case of copyright, licensing, all that stuff, print sales. But then an important facet of it is the relationship with the people in the photographs. That's become a high priority in the last few years as we've sort of sought to let people know that it's possible to search the archive and that they may find whānau members in there. It's now possible to do it all online. So there's been a sort of a big effort to let people know how they can engage with the archive, and that's been quite a big part of it. But I should also say that it's a real privilege to be working with the images and to be in the position of sort of honouring Ans's legacy, because that's an unparalleled contribution to New Zealand history, Aotearoa history, through 65 years of very consistent recording of New Zealand social history through times of massive changes. And so, we have to tip our hat to Ans for her tenacity and comprehensive work.
We know that Ans documented so many different communities in New Zealand as well over those decades. But does that make it more difficult when you're deciding what to show, what to hold back, what to digitize when it comes to the entire collection?
When we started digitizing the archive, there's about 320,000 images.
Wow.
And of those, there's about 150,000 negatives, so the remainder are digital files. But when we started the process of digitizing the negatives, Ans was alive and was adamant that we needed to digitize every frame, even though there might have been 3 or 5 photographs leading to one spectacular photograph. She wanted them all done, which was a great thing really to have done, because as time's gone on and people have come to engage with with the images, we can never really tell what people will be interested in. As far as the exhibitions are concerned, it's a very difficult job deciding what to show, and we do sort of lean on previous kind of themes that have been developed over the years, particularly through books. So Ans was mostly photographing for publication when she did the bulk of her work in the 60s, 70s, 80s. So we could use a book as an example, which could then have an exhibition of images that are in the book, gives them a bit of framework there, or a theme, or a location. But the exciting part really is to think about what the curation possibilities will look like when the archive is completely catalogued and you're able to dip into the archive using some of the metadata tags that are attached to the files and start to extract images that no one's ever seen before, because no one person is actually ever going to be able to look at the archive because it's so big. So the entry points are quite important for us to think about now, and how a curator, let's say at the MoMA in New York as an example on our wish list, or anyone around the world, can engage with the archive and distilling it into something that's usable and consumable.
Our core question today, David, what does it mean to steward an artist's legacy to ensure their work continues to live and speak long after they're gone. What's your response to that?
Well, as I said about it being a privilege on my part, but I guess I think, from a family part, I don't have any family relationship to Ans. It was purely a friendship and business relationship that we developed. But from a family's point of view, I mean, we know many examples of estates where they've just haven't been willing to engage, or they've decided that they're not going to share images or allow publication of images. I mean, that's one extreme. The other extreme with an archive like this is almost like it's a compulsory thing for her family to be willing to have the archive available because of the people in the photographs. The people in the photographs make the photographs. Without them, we don't have images, and the access to those images now is the most important kind of part of what we do as guardians of the archive. So in the case of Ans, it means everything. I feel like it's my not my calling, but it's my purpose in life. One of my main purposes in life now is to be a responsible guardian for this archive, and we're well on the way to doing that, obviously.
Speaking about family there, I wanted to pick up on that a little bit. I wanted to ask how you navigate the balance between family wishes, public access, and then institutional interests when it comes to Ans's legacy.
Yeah, well, I think on the family side, and I think probably be fair to say that they're quite pleased that Ans and I teamed up towards later in her life to get some sense of organisation happening with the cataloguing and the physically looking after it. I mean, there's different kind of attitudes towards publishing Ans's images without people in the photographs being aware of the publication. I mean, that horse bolted really with Ans at the time that the images were created, and if you look back on a lot of the archives and things, you'll see that she did a lot of work to returning photographs to people that she had photographed to the extent she could, and now there's unlimited free access to the archive, which kind of rounds that out quite nicely too.
I want to ask if you think there's a difference between like how an artist might imagine their own legacy versus how it actually plays out in reality when they're gone.
Yeah, there probably is a difference, and not many artists live to see a great deal of success in their lifetime. I mean, Ans did see a bit of that in her lifetime. She was very aware of the magnitude of what she'd done, and the possibility of future generations, with her photographs being the only photographs of people that people in the future will be able to encounter with. So I think the sort of stewardship towards the digitization and the way that the prints were being stored, and then my support to her through the legal and business side gave her quite a lot of comfort that that her archive was going to be well looked after. So I feel like we've done something pretty good there. But I can imagine it must be for a lot of artists, living artists, or prior to their passing, it must be quite a thing, because I'm not a maker myself, but I know that Ans viewed those negatives as being like her children. They were her treasure, and that was everything. Like a painter would make a painting, or a sculptor a sculpture, and those artworks are their creations, and that all of the feelings that go with that, and the unknown about what's going to happen to them. And of course, these days there's more and more people passing, and the possibility for institutions to receive big collections is dropping off because the capacity. It's a real, we're in for a kind of a period ahead where there's just going to be a whole lot of families who inherit a whole lot of artwork, and I don't know what they're going to do with it.
Yeah, it's a tricky philosophical
tricky
question for the art world, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
On that, also, I want to zoom out and look at photographers more generally, because I feel like they're an interesting kind of artist. They can have a huge archive, massive archive, as Ans has. But but I feel like they're also a bit underrepresented when it comes to their value in the art world. We
Yeah.
know that I've spoken to people before who have talked about photographers being sidelined in
Yep.
collecting circles versus, say, like a painter or even a sculptor. Why do you think that is? And is it changing,
It is
David?
changing, and I think it's just a hangover from an art market that's relatively immature as far as depth and length of time that it's been operating. I lived in the Netherlands immediately prior to setting up the gallery in 2007, and I could see in the Netherlands and in Europe, America, that photography was just so highly rated and highly regarded, and there was it was, if you had a print by someone of standing, then that was as good as having a painting. So I think New Zealand is kind of catching up. Photography represents an opportunity for people interested in acquiring artwork to participate at a financial level that's a lot less than a comparable painter or sculptor. So there's that kind of factor. There's the multiples aspect, which give it more possibility to be collected rather than the sort of exclusivity of one mega painting or something like that. But I think slowly but surely people are catching on to it, although it does have to come with a slight warning, I guess, around making sure about provenance and things like that. We're in an AI era where who knows what's real. Things can be created, so you have to come back with collecting photography to knowing that you've got something that's issued or authenticated or signed by the photographer, and if there's a number of prints that it states that it's one of, that's accurate, and just do some homework before you're going to start launching into it.
I also want to talk about the art market, David. You've mentioned before to me that flooding the market with an artist's collection can actually damage their long-term value. Can you unpack that a little bit more for me?
One thing I say to people as a first comment about the art world is that it's just an incredibly unusual industry and market. And there's no regulation and there's no rules, there's no right way or kind of wrong way to really sort of do anything. So, we talked about this point about the whole lot of artists, coming up to passing away time. Well, there's the same with collectors who have been collecting since the 60s and 70s and 80s, and they've got big art collections. Their walls were full. Children don't want the artwork. What do you do with it? You probably try and, if it's a catalogue of collection of sort of substance, you could potentially auction it as a single vendor catalogue. But in the case of a photography area where you might have an auction of one photographer's work, the New Zealand market is small. So if you were to, like an example recently, a Grant Kerr photography collection in Auckland, there was a number of Peter Perrier works. He was Peter's main patron, so he had a huge number of Peter Perrier works, and that kind of affects the market. You release 40 odd works by someone into the market in the secondary market versus a primary thing, which I do. I have a gallery space where people come in and look at it, where you're literally selling to the highest bidder. That's kind of where you're going to be rock bottom. It's not a great indication of where the market is, but that's at that point, that's what's setting the price for that artist's work, and quite possible that the works offered are going to be some of the best that the artist has made, so there'll be some spikes there, but then there'll also be other ones that just don't even sell, and that's not good.
No.
They sit there, and not from an outside looking in point of view, you can say, well, there were 20 Peter Perriers there that didn't sell. You're asking me to this much money for that print. What's the real price? It's really makes it quite tricky to navigate. So it is hard to reconcile all of those things. And I've always said to people who are interested in investigating about artists and learning more that they really should go to galleries, because that's where they're getting someone who can speak to the work, like I can speak to Ans's work or Jeffrey Harris or whoever I work with, and you're getting the most authoritative kind of inside info about where that artist is up to at any particular time.
Also on the art market, something that has been quite seismic for our art market here in how it operates is the resale royalty scheme
Mm.
for visual artists, which was introduced around a year ago, I think,
Mm-hmm.
end of last year, start of this year. Has it genuinely shifted the balance of power, do you think, David, in the art market?
No.
Why is that, do you
Because
think?
I don't have the up-to-date, numbers of how many artists have been paid out. I mean, sure, there's been a trickle down to number of artists, but there are thresholds on the level of work that are sold, and the people who are going to do very well out of it are the people who have already done quite well out of it. So McCann Estate, Hortedy Estate, Gordon Walters Estate. I mean, I know we got paid quite a reasonable amount of money for Ans's sale of Ans's prints recently. So yeah, it helps, but it's not like a seismic change. And I think there's quite a few. There's still a bit of work to do to get more buy-in from the arts community into actually using it and registering sales and things like that too. There needs to be a bit more work done on that.
I think when it was introduced, there was a lot of talk of it being more of a symbolic act for artists. But
Yeah.
on that note that you just raised, I wondered, like, for a photographer or another artist who maybe works in an underappreciated or underrepresented medium, has that actually opened any real opportunity for them, or there's still value legacy problems there?
I don't think it's changed a lot, André. I don't think it's changed a lot. I mean, it was introduced to New Zealand as a requirement of a European free trade agreement. So, to bring us in line with international regulation in that area. So, it's something that it's been like a drag along thing rather than kind of like a pointy initiative to stimulate the artist world. Don't get me wrong, artists would love a bit of return on their artwork, but the major works by mid-career people, Wayne Yule, as an example, there's very few that get sold, very few. So I mean, it could be 20 years or 50 years when a Wayne Yule painting that I sold for 20,000 or 30,000 might be a couple of 100,000, and that's when his children will do well out of it. But that's probably not in his lifetime.
What would make more of a difference, do you think, David, to artists?
Well, sticking more, and there has been an uptake in the recognition of copyright laws. So there's always been a big bugbear for me, was the fact that auction houses didn't recognise and pay copyright fees for using artist images. So that's changed a bit, and that revenue has been collected through a company in Auckland, Caroline Stone's looking after. So that changed quite a bit. I think a little bit of regulation in the industry would be quite good, but that's going to have to come from within. And I'm wondering if someone, in my remainder of my career in the arts, whether or not that's something that I can contribute towards through having been already doing it for 20 years and the previous background that I've had in law and business. So there may be something there, but that's that requires a lot of effort and a lot of passion and generosity on someone's part to drive that, because it's not going to be anything that you're going to get any money out of. There's been things in the past that have been quite good, like the Artist Alliance, where you can have a little bulletin that will have some guidelines about what best practice might look like between an artist and a dealer, and what the usual things would be in a dealer-artist relationship. So that could be developed a bit more.
So Sweet has moved its base to Auckland, but I know that you still have really deep connections to Wellington. How do you see the differences between the two cities' arts ecosystems?
Well, there's nowhere like Wellington, and I come back to Wellington every time, and I just think, wow, this is just the coolest capital, coolest arts place. It's got something that nowhere else has got. Even you go overseas to cities, you come back to Wellington, it's got it happening. Cuba Street is a really unique thing anywhere, where you've got about a kilometre top to bottom where you could walk up and down and go to 100 different things, cool things. So, and there's nowhere like that in Auckland. Auckland is spread out. People need cars. They're stressed out about picking their kids up and running late, and no one's ever on time. So while Auckland has a bigger population, it doesn't follow necessarily that all of that population starts becomes aware of your gallery or your artist. So a lot of work going on to sort of build up the profile up there. But meanwhile, Wellington, we've still got the Ans thing going on. We have a collaboration with 545, a little boutique in Cuba Street, and decades of networks here. Just can catch up with people. I've been at the Portrait Gallery this afternoon, guest speaking down there later in the year, so just organising the details for that. But beyond those cities as well, like Christchurch, there's so much good stuff happening in Christchurch.
Totally.
It's really, really feeling quite buzzy every time we go down there. We've got some good networks of people. Up north, do quite a lot of stuff with Wayne up around Whangarei, going up to Waitangi with him next year. We've just been in New York for a collaborative exhibition at Wayne and Ans show there. So, it's sweet as everywhere.
Where I read actually recently was the second most creative city in New Zealand. Apparently, according to Infometrics, is Queenstown.
Oh, Queenstown.
Behind Wellington.
I would have said Wanganui.
Yeah, which I thought was a really curious fact. Above Auckland even, so there you go.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the spread.
Yes. Well, that's a good thing. More arts and culture everywhere, the better.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think finally, David, you've brought an object in from your creative life to share with us today.
Yes.
What is it, and what's the story behind it?
So
little pouch here.
It has a little pouch. Yeah. So this is something that Ans was gifted. I think she was gifted. It would have been in this.
This belonged to Ans.
Yeah. This belonged to Ans. She had it, and we used to get it out and kind of just look at it and hold it.
What is it? A
it's
rope?
A pounamu that was made for her by her old mate Teo Scone.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
Am I okay to touch it?
Yeah. Touch
my goodness!
Yeah, so after Ans passed away,
this was gifted to her, made by her friend.
Yeah, Teo.
Wow.
Yeah. So he had a period working in the West Coast where he applied himself to a range of different media, drawing, painting, carving goods. Then he went to the West Coast and became a great exponent of carving pounamu.
How beautiful.
Yeah, so after Ans passed away, her family very generously passed it on to me. So
this is in your keeping now for safe care.
Yeah.
Do you ever wear it?
I do wear it. I'm quite conscious when I am wearing it because I don't often wear anything. But I do like having it, even if I wear it sort of down under my t-shirt. Just there's something knowing that if I'm doing a talk about Ans or
she's there
whatever,
with
it's
you.
kind of nice. Yeah, nice having it there as a presence.
How beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, David, for coming in. I so appreciate your time and this chat. Yeah.
Kia ora.
As David reminds us, an artist's legacy isn't fixed. It lives on in the choices we make about how their work is seen, shared, and understood. I'm André Chumko, and this was Articulate. If you'd like to stream more episodes like this, visit our YouTube channel at thepost-nz or find the full episode archive at thepost.co.nz/articulate. I'll see you next time.